Hello and welcome to the Masters Swimming Podcast, available on all the major podcast platforms and on YouTube. I'm Joe Malone, and this week I'm joined by swimmer and award-winning broadcaster Nick Hope. So it's a pleasure to have you on, Nick.
Pleasure to be here, Joe. Delighted.
And how you doing?
Yeah, really good. Thank you. Really good. Slowish start to the year in terms of training, but I've got targets for later in the year, so hopefully we'll get there and book in a few events, get that fear going, and then that'll motivate me a bit more in training.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. We always need the fear, don't we? We'll get onto your swimmer later, but I want to start by talking about your work, which is incredibly interesting. So you've been working for the BBC since 2007, or worked for the BBC since 2007, should I say? You were there Olympic and Paralympic Games correspondent since 2010, but I believe you've been to every game since 2008. Is that right?
Yeah. It's quite a few over that time. Yeah, summer and winter. Senior and youth, so ticked a few off. It's been pretty amazing journey.
No, that's fantastic. So I want to start by asking, which one has been your favorite so far and why?
It's almost like the question of like if someone asks you like which is your favorite child. It's so hard to answer. I don't have children, so I don't have to quite answer that one yet. But there are for so many reasons. So many of them have like different highlights. Yeah. It is obviously really difficult to say anything other than the home games, London 2012, because to bring it to, and I was living in London at the time and had been there for about 6 years at that point. 5 or 6 years. And to see the city change the way that it did, and it was almost like being back up north where I am now, where people on public transport do genuinely actually talk to one another and smile at one another. And to see that vibe change in London was amazing. And the vibe every night when you kind of walked off the park and the buzz that you got from crowds that have just been in to watch all of the different sports, be it at the Aquatic Centre, the Olympic Stadium, the athletics, or any of the other ones, water polo, basketball, handball, even the box that rocks, as it were, velodrome. That park was absolutely amazing. So those games are really hard to beat, but I was still quite junior in my career at that point. So, the moments there were special, but I had more moments probably during Rio and Tokyo that were highlights in terms of like professional achievements, because obviously I was a little bit more senior, a little bit better known, and got a little bit more airtime in the other games. So yeah, from a personal point of view, probably, and experience-wise, London. I'm almost second guessing myself now. I'm rethinking it, but no, I will go London as number one. But then, like professionally, maybe it was more Rio, Tokyo, and then obviously there've been Winters and Youth Olympics in between there that were amazing. Yeah, very privileged position.
Definitely, I was expecting you to say the home games just because that is the obvious answer. And interesting, actually, you said you saw the city change so much, because my sister actually lives in Hackney Wick, which is obviously borders onto Stratford, and you can, so she lives in a flat, and only because her window doesn't face the Olympic Park, you can't see it. But if it did, you'd have a great view. And as soon as you walk out of a flat, there you are, the sort of, what is now West Ham's stadium, of course. But Hackney Wick itself has just completely changed because of the Olympic Park. And I think it's been really great to see actually the kind of knock-on effect of the Olympics in terms of how good it's been for East London.
There are so many games that you look back on where they kind of spoke a lot about legacy in the build up to it. And then you go back and actually see they didn't really do much in those areas, or at least not from a sporting perspective. London, and obviously what's happened around Stratford and the regeneration has been, as you say, incredible. The park is an absolutely lovely place to go and walk around, even if you're doing nothing to do with elite sport. It's just a nice place to be. And I know there's been lots of talk about what the success of London 2012, and there's questionable statistics in different places. But if you look at that legacy in terms of those big venues that are on the park still, with the Aquatic Centre, with the stadium, with the velodrome in particular, and as I mentioned before, the box that rocks, the handball one, which is a multi-purpose venue. You have boxing in there, you have volleyball, hockey, all kinds of things. Wheelchair basketball has made a real difference to the country.
No, definitely. So thinking about all of the Olympic Games that you've been to, then Olympic and Paralympic, should I say, in terms of seeing something extraordinary, and that can be swimming or it can be actually any sport, is there like a moment to you that always stands out whenever you think about the games? Does your mind take you to a certain moment?
There are again, there are quite a lot, and I've been very, I was trying to think about this beforehand. I was thinking like, what my favorite things that I've seen, because obviously, from a swimming perspective, been to quite a lot of events over the year, and a lot of them do blur. And when you speak about them, sometimes, oh yeah, I was there and that happened, because it's a little bit different when you're in a mix zone doing interviews. You don't obviously
Yeah,
see it play out the way that you do on TV, so you
sure.
don't always see all the nuances and the interchanges and stuff that you do. But actually, one of my favorite memories is nothing to do with swimming. It's the Winter Olympics, Pyeongchang 2018 in South Korea, was the men's half pipe final, where you've got Shaun White, the legend of the sport, who'd won gold in the first two games that his sport had been in. And then he'd finished fourth in Sochi, and you kind of thought that's probably it. But he came back for these games and was in like gold, silver throughout the rounds in this battle with a young Japanese kid who was coming through. And he was in first place with one round to go. Then the Japanese kid came down and put down a ridiculous score, and you're like, right, that's it. Okay, Shaun White gets the silver. That's still incredible. And then he went down and delivered the most just stunning routine, and you're like, this guy is just the GOAT. And I was in kind of like with the crowd at that moment, all these Americans going absolutely nuts. That's sort of one of those moments, because you were so close to win all the fans. The exact opposite to what we had in Tokyo, obviously, because there weren't the fans, unfortunately.
Sure.
But those moments where you really get the sense of the atmosphere are probably the best ones. So yeah, that's one that sticks in my mind. But I could reel off probably another 10 that were amazing. Been very lucky.
Yeah. And I'm really glad that you kind of referenced how crazy the crowd went, because that genuinely is what makes sport, isn't it? And I'm a huge football fan. I've said that many times on this podcast, and I'm a big Liverpool fan. So watching a lot of sort of Premier League football when there were no fans in stadiums bored the life off me, even though I'm watching elite footballers. It just was not the same. And obviously we heard from a lot of swimmers, GB swimmers, that Adam Peaty's come out and said he needs a crowd. He needs a crowd to feel at his best.
Yeah, to perform, to get that buzz. And that was fascinating, because I saw it at different extremes, really. In Tokyo, you had, for example, in a sport like diving, where they want complete quiet. They don't want any distractions. They don't want the hype, because you need to get yourself to that level ready to perform. And anything that happens around you can be a massive distraction when your performance is over in that time. They would have loved a crowd there, but it wasn't a negative for them, for many of them, that environment. Versus, I covered taekwondo as well as the swimming, and you had someone like Jade Jones, who'd won gold in London, the one in Rio, when she had all the crowd there cheering for her, and then went out in round one, despite being world number one, when there was no crowd, and she was afterwards, I just couldn't get up for it the usual way I did. And obviously Adam was saying that, he needs people there to fire him up if he's going to deliver the best performances of his life, which are the best performances there have ever been in the men's 100-meter, 50-meter breaststrokes. So yeah, it's interesting how different sports react to it, for sure.
When you're out there reporting, does the crowd energize you?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it can be a distraction as well. It can be like, so in Rio, when I was I was doing taekwondo broadcasting, and you have your earpiece in and you're trying to listen to the questions that are coming in, and I was like less than 2 meters away from where all the crowd were and the fans, and they were cheering. And although the Brazilians weren't doing that well, they were cheering for anyone who beat a German fighter, because obviously Germany beat Brazil in the World Cup 2 years before that. So they were kind of hated. So everybody was like going mad. And you had these Brazilian fans just leaning over, like coming over within like that far of me, just screaming. Amazing atmosphere, but you just couldn't. I had no idea what I was being asked, so I was just having to guess roughly and basically just keep talk until my cameraman frantically waved and said, "You're off air." No idea what was going on.
Amazing.
But, that you love moments like that, where there is that, because you can genuinely just be honest with the people back at home and be like, look, I have no idea what you're saying, but I can definitely tell you what's happening here. I mean, just look at it. And you're bringing people so much life and color, which is so much easier to do than when you're there in Tokyo, which we were last year, the year before, 2021. And it's so quiet. Yeah.
Yeah. But besides the obvious caveats that you mentioned earlier about, so the home games, you were more junior at the time, so you perhaps preferred the later games because you had more going on. I remember hearing Bruno Fratus say that Rio Olympics was a real struggle for him, because it being a home games for him, he felt the pressure like he's never felt before. Not so much when he was racing, but he said he just couldn't get any peace and quiet around the Olympic Park and everything like that. How did you feel with the home games being? Did you feel an extra sense of responsibility?
I mean, like most people, I think when you're in that position, which is a position where you need to, the reason I like doing live broadcasting, for example, because it's the closest you will get to competing in terms of replicating that buzz, because you only get that one chance
Yeah.
to nail it. If you mess it up, it feels bloody awful. But if you don't, it feels pretty good when you know that you delivered under pressure.
Sure.
So I guess, yeah, there were nerves, and before you go on air, you're like, why am I putting myself in this position? Why do I really want to do this? But that's exactly the same as when you step onto the blocks. I mean, how many times, sure, most of your listeners like yourself, you get there and you're like, early on a Saturday or Sunday morning, your friends are out for brunch or something and have a nice coffee, and you're there in a block about to smash out a 200 meters of pain or something, or whatever it is. You do it because there's something in you that knows it's a triumph to achieve it. So yeah, I loved that buzz around London. And yeah, it didn't, to be honest, it didn't really feel that much different doing it in Rio. There was probably more opportunities, and by Tokyo is a lot more experience, so you get less of the fear factor before you go live. But then you expect more of yourself, like you would do when you win a race, you then want to win a race in a new PB time. You want to keep lowering it. Once you've achieved something, so right, I've done my live broadcast for the BBC Network TV. Right, I want to do another one, but this time I want it to be longer. This time I want it to be better. It's exactly the same thing. You just go from you're never satisfied in a way. You always want to do better. You always want to do more in a way.
No, completely get it. So obviously you've seen many swimmers, all the swimmers, in fact, in the last kind of 15 years. Who would you say is the greatest swimmer that you've ever seen with your very eyes?
Well, I mean, it's the GOAT is Michael Phelps, isn't it?
Yeah,
I mean,
sure.
he does have the most medals. I mean, yeah, I mean, he was phenomenal to watch. It was interesting, obviously, see differences because, for example, in London, he performed well for any normal swimmer, but it wasn't what he'd achieved in Beijing.
Exactly.
So it was there was a very different sort of vibe around it, but it was still so special because he'd announced, that and afterwards, that was going to be his last games. So even though the vibe around the aquatic center was a bit different, not just because of him, but because the British swimmers didn't quite achieve at those games what we'd have hoped they would. It was probably the only venue on that Olympic park where there weren't British Olympic gold medals. Every few days was the one that kind of missed the podium party, as it were. Although, some great performances, 2 bronzes for Becky Adlington and the silver for Michael Jameson, which was epic, the 200 meters. It was a kind of strange thing. Go forwards 4 years. Obviously, Phelps didn't retire. He came back. The story around him at those games was incredible. The response from the crowd, who all knew his story. The way I just remember him kind of like walking around pool and being sort of like, he was properly soaking it in then, because he understood where he'd been in those years since London. He understood that London wasn't what Beijing was, and that this was very, very much, there was no coming back after Rio. That was definitely going to be it because of what he put himself through to get to those games. And to just see him, come out of the pool with several golds, wasn't it, after those games individually, but also even what was special, the silver medal in the 200, which he shared with Laszlo Che and Chad Leclos, Joseph Schooling winning the race. That in itself was an absolutely iconic moment. It was an almost changing of the guard to have the 3 legends there, and then the young guy coming through. So yeah, I mean, Phelps, so many moments, was definitely the most amazing. But from a British perspective, to see, and again, the response, I've seen him at World Championships and obviously go quicker, but that moment in Brazil, in Rio, when he won that gold medal with a massive world record, the vast majority of us within the community already knew what he was capable of and what he was probably going to deliver there. But that was the moment the world were like, whoa.
We're talking about Adam Peaty here, by the way.
Adam Peaty, sorry. Yeah. Adam Peaty. What he achieved there was where the world really stood up and was like, wow. So Phelps the greatest ever. And Peaty's performance in the 100 meters at Rio was just amazing.
Yeah, I can imagine. And then I'm interested to know then kind of what's the most inspiring, or who's the most inspiring swimmer you've ever seen? And this is more probably personal, based on when you think about what type of a swimmer you are or you would like to be, kind of who are the swimmers that you love because they kind of do your races and they're the ones that you're kind of watching out for?
I mean, when I was a kid, it was obviously it was kind of the time that Ian Thorpe was coming through.
Yeah.
Obviously, as a teenager, his home world champs just before the home Olympics, obviously Sydney 2000. So I remember watching him, and he's, I don't know, maybe 18 months older than me. So that, you know, obviously he was, wow, what an incredible swimmer. What he's doing from a domestic point of view, there weren't really any backstrokers at that point that I was kind of looking to, but James Hickman was like the star of the sport at that point. Obviously, butterfly swimmer. My coach was trying to at that point convert me into being, or at least have it as my second stroke, which I wasn't that keen on. 50s maybe, but not. I'm more of a 200 swimmer, and 200 fly, no chance, mate. Was not something I fancied. But he was just a great swimmer and a great guide. I remember meeting him at a meet at Stockport Metro, which is where he trained. We had like a junior competition, and he came round and he was signing autographs, and he got to me and was like waiting for me to hand him something, and I just froze and looked at him. I'd like just didn't know what to do, and then somebody gave me a hat, which he gave and signed, and then he walked on. And then I remember I've met him properly, I think, for the first time at Barcelona Worlds in 2013. And he was working the Speedo, and I was there for the BBC. And I had we were having a media race, and I had like a photo with him and stuff like that. And then I posted it on Facebook, like a little bit about how he was my hero when I was a kid and I couldn't talk to him, and I was still a bit nervous now. And someone tagged him in it because I wasn't like, and then I was like really embarrassed, and then but really, really embarrassed actually. Should have known someone would do that and would know him. But anyway, he's been like awesome, like to get to know him professionally and personally since. So he was a kind of an inspiration as a swimmer, even though he didn't do the same event that I did. And then obviously like a great guy to get to know. Yeah.
No, that sounds perfect. And I'm wondering then, so are there any like young swimmers at the moment that you're watching at the moment and you're thinking, you know what, these guys, this guy will go, they could be a great of this sport in 10 years time?
I mean, there's quite a few out there at the moment. We started to see them come through. You know, obviously Tokyo being the weird one, it's sort of there were a lot of the established names that would just kind of clung on for an extra year, and some of the youngsters who you now start to see at last year's World Championships come through. We were like, oh, they were at the Olympics and they were in those finals, and now you're starting to see just, you know, what they're capable of. So if you look at people like, you know, like on the women's side, Summer McIntosh,
yes,
Molly O'Callaghan, so Canada and Australia respectively. You know, what they were achieving in their first World Champs last year was amazing, and what, you know, the way that they've looked into the back end of last year in short course championships, they are really exciting prospects. Then see someone like Ruta Mayatisa come back after being that childhood star, 15 years old, winning gold at London 2012 when she was training in Plymouth at that point, Lithuania. To see her come back has been breathtaking after retiring and then coming back. On the men's side, I mean, David Popovic, could have started with him. Not a bad 2022, was it? Gold in every 100 and 200 senior and junior worlds and Europeans. Just incredible breakthrough. And to obviously down that 100-meter world record in the Europeans, the way that he did was just
it was
absolutely. And then someone like, you know, Leon Marchand, I said inverted commas, only did the World Championships. You saw him win the 200 and 400, then basically step away. You know, he obviously didn't do the Europeans, didn't do a lot of the other meets or the short course 20, and then you now start to see his performances the last few months in the NCAAs, NCAAs. Yeah, what a prospect! So you've got you know 4 names there. Again, there's a dozen or so that could really step up over the next year and achieve some really phenomenal things.
Yeah, no, it's exciting, and I quite like that you started that answer by talking about the previous games that had some of the kind of people still maybe hanging on for one more games or perhaps coming out of retirement. I'm interested to know, as a kind of reporter or as even just watching the games as a fan, do you prefer to see a breakthrough of somebody new, or a big comeback story that you perhaps weren't expecting? Somebody's come out of retirement and here they are again. They're a legend already.
That's a good question. I mean, sit on the fence. I like a combination. It's good to have variety. Like, you can have one day you can have the young breakthrough, and the next one, like the old guy who's, clinging on, his shoulders are hanging off or something like that. Yeah, I mean, the comeback ones are always interesting because I guess as a master swimmer, you sort of relate to it a little bit more, because, not quite to their level, obviously, but the suffering, the pain, and how awful your body feels after a training session now compared to what it did when you were one of those youngsters coming through or whatever, the way that it's so hard to recover. So, those are great. And obviously, I spent quite a bit of time with Nicholas Santos at the World Short Course Championships in Melbourne just before Christmas. He wasn't, on a comeback. He was just keeping it going. 42 years old, winning world gold. You're like, what?
Yes.
And obviously terrifying master swimmers now retired that he may go into master swimming. So it's a good job I didn't, go into the swimming butterfly, really. Because I have no chance for the next 5-6 years or so, or whatever. But yet, I like the variety. You need those youngsters coming through to keep the sport fresh. But equally, you need the established athletes to keep going long enough to, keep those obviously to build their profile, but to also have something that I think people resonate with that a little bit more. Those people watching back at home, I said obviously from a masters community, but just wider as well. People be like, wow, he's doing that. I think I feel old, and he's 5 years older than I. She's 5 years older than me, and look at what she's doing. That is quite, I think, inspirational as well. And we talk a lot about, the youngsters inspiring kids back at home. They absolutely do. But I think now when you're looking at an era where, masters participation, not just in swimming, but in lots of sports, is really growing. And I think that is a big part of it as well. We want to keep the nation and the world active, avoid, the ever-growing obesity crisis. So seeing a few, old guys and girls powering it out there, keeping it going for a few more games, definitely want to see more of that.
Yeah, I think it depends on the dynamic of the sport as well, because again, I've mentioned I like football, and because that's on week after week after week, for me, I love seeing a new kid come through the academy, as it were. But I think with something like swimming, because a lot of it is based around that once a year big competition, so we don't see it as often, just kind of from a fan's point of view at home on the sofa. So I think that's where I love to see the legends, and I'm kind of the same with I'm that classic tennis fan where I watch tennis once a year when Wimbledon's on. So it's like, I want to see Federer, I want to see Djokovic and Nadal, because, they are the best. And even though you sort of think, oh, but what about this new person? I'm like, no, because I haven't seen Federer for a year because I haven't watched tennis since. Yeah. I think swimming kind of has a similar thing for me with, I enjoy seeing those hanging on for one more games because they're legendary.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, and that it's always an interesting thing. At what point do you want the youngster to come through? I mean, this is a fan point of view, because you don't want to see, in the last race, a lot of the time, you want the superstar to go out on a
high, of course,
on a high. So sometimes, but that said, and to go back to my, Michael Phelps before, when he did, that silver medal was quite special in that moment. I know Joseph Schooling didn't go on to perhaps come, the dominant force that you'd have thought after those games for various reasons. But it's interesting to see how that sort of journey pans out, for sure.
So who's the best swimmer that you've ever interviewed? Or as in who gives the best interview?
I mean, Adam Peaty always gives you a news line. There's always something in his story, and he's been very good at talking about, other elements to the sport and, the mental health side of it, which traditionally athletes haven't. I'd probably say someone that, like, just to go a bit further left here, like Chad Leclos, someone got to know very well since London, and spent quite a bit of time with him, getting to know him as a person outside of the sport, and has, someone who's been through an awful lot, some of which people are aware of, some of which people will become more aware of in the coming years. But a real icon for African sport, who's, as I said, faced a lot of adversity, had that success as a youngster, and now probably 10 years on, fully appreciates what he did then, having subsequently had, more challenges and things. So yeah, he's probably one of the most interesting ones for sure.
Yeah. And have you had any difficult and sort of really awkward swimmers that you've interviewed and you can't, you have no choice because they win or something, and you think, oh God, I know these are tough work, but you've got to do it.
There are. I'm not mentioning names because I'm still. I'll save that for a book one day. But yeah, there are. There's a few. I mean, there's obviously, there will be athletes that don't generally like to stop and talk very much. There'll be those that the hardest ones, actually, those are okay because you know how to deal with them. There'll be one or two very short questions. You'll not get much, so you can plan in advance. The really difficult ones are and it's not just limited to swimming, this could be anybody, and again, any people in and out of sport, but ones that are unpredictable. You have no idea, and this can be regardless of the result, whether they're going to want to talk to you. And it's fine if you're in a situation where you've got a camera there and you just do it whenever. If you're live, it is awful. It is really bad because, obviously you're in that moment. Whatever they do is a reflection less so on them and more so on you a lot of the time as the interviewer. There've been ones. There was one in my most iconic, but the interview I guess I was best known for was the Taekwondo one at Tokyo 2020 when Latelo Mohammed, after losing in the last second of the heavyweight final at the games, was devastated. Absolutely went to pieces, and it was polarized. So some people were like, textbook interview because I just let him speak. Others were like, you should have just let him go. I was like, well, no, he stopped for me, and what I did is I gave him that moment to talk through what he was experiencing. And probably more people learn more about the sport and what it means to win an Olympic gold from hearing him lose one than they ever did from someone who comes through and said how excited they are. So yeah, you've got to judge it. It can be it's a very delicate situation because you're almost, you're an interviewer, you're a journalist, but you're kind of being a psychologist in that moment as well, when it's live. And you've got people who are at the extreme highs and lows of emotions. So I think I've dodged that question without having to give you a name of who I think is really awkward to interview. But yeah, you've just got to be on your toes, really.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it is a trade-off as well, isn't it? Because like you say, sometimes you might feel bad about sticking a mic under somebody's nose if they've just been beaten or something like that. But equally, you have a job to do, and the athlete has to respect that as well. Because I've seen a couple of times now, there are videos that have gone viral on social media where a sports star has stood in front of an interviewer and given one-word answers and just gone, yeah, no. And I just think, again, that trade-off, you have to respect the journalist. They're respecting you. They're asking you fair questions. And that's the thing, that some of these sports stars that you see, they've actually performed really well. It's not because they've done badly and they're hurting. They're just being arrogant, and it's a real shame.
Yeah, I mean, it is difficult because, I've got to always have sympathy and understanding for the situation that they're in. But you're exactly right. There are those out there who sometimes don't realize the importance of that interview for them as a moment to profile themselves, in that, you might not want to do this interview, right? And I get that. You probably want to swim down, you want to go and eat something, whatever, get it, totally. But it is also your moment to sell yourself, to celebrate your success. And that is the moment that not only, your fans are going to engage and your parents are going to see, but your potential sponsors are going to see as well.
I was just about to say that,
the type of person that you are.
Yeah.
So all of those kind of factor into it. But obviously that is difficult when you're in that moment of an extreme high or otherwise, definitely.
Yeah. So I'm going to presume swimming is your favorite sport. But outside of swimming, are there any other sports that you are really passionate about?
Look, I always said I love everything that is across the Olympic and Paralympic realm, essentially. So I'm happy to always work on any of them and other ones. I've covered netball, I've covered lawn bowls as well, actually. So a couple of Commonwealth sports in there. I'm generally a big sport fan. Football, Bolton Wanderers fan for my sins. One of a limited few, but I've always kind of kept, I suppose, not deliberately away from it from a work perspective. I could have gone into a direction when I started out at the BBC and I wanted to carve a niche and be known for something. It was, do I go down the Olympic and Paralympic route, or do I go down sort of like football league stories? Because at that point, Bolton were going into the Premier League, but I had quite an interest in Football League. And I went for the Olympic and Paralympics because I just had that a little bit more passion and connection to it. Whereas obviously football had always been work. Played a bit, but I was rubbish. In all honesty, many people would say I'm rubbish at swimming also, but I was even worse at football. Trust me. So anyway, I went down and it ultimately turned out to be a good decision. London obviously had the Olympics and followed that trajectory up. But yeah, so I mean, football is something that I love doing, and I like Formula One, but in terms of like the other Olympic sports, I mean, diving, obviously, it keeps it within the aquatic community. I just find fascinating. I'm terrified of heights. I have jumped from the Rio Olympic tower, so the 10-meter, but only jumped. There was
Brilliant.
no way I was diving from that. I didn't really want to do it either, but it was kind of like, I'm here.
Yeah.
This is the only chance. If I'm ever going to do it, it wasn't going to be, I grew up, as I said, in Wigan. So, we had a 10-meter platform in Wigan International Swimming Pool back in the day before it was knocked down. It wasn't going to be there. If I was ever going to do it, it was like in the Rio Olympic pool. So I went from that. But yeah, the sport is terrifying, but it's amazing because you get no other sport I can think where you get so little actual competition time. Think about, like, even if you're doing a 50, you're going to get 20 seconds, sure. 25 seconds, whatever, to race it. In diving, you get 5 or 6 routines that are over in that. And any one of them goes wrong, and that's it. I just find it an absolutely fascinating sport. Obviously, Taekwondo I've mentioned a few times, something I knew nothing about until I got into my previous job, but got a real passion for after covering it and meeting the athletes. And then also, I guess, it's impossible not to respect those in gymnastics, in terms of being the all-round incredible athletes that they have to be in something like artistic gymnastics. Total respect for them. Yeah,
no, sounds great. Well, I mean, you kind of said that some people may say you're not such a good swimmer, and now it's time for you to raise your profile as a swimmer, so let's talk about that. When did you start swimming? Did you start as a child?
Yeah, I just started as a kid. A lot of things, like a lot of people that grew up in the late 80s and early 90s who had asthma, doctors were all like, take them to the pool, it'll be really good for their lung capacity. And so, yeah, that's how I got into it. Wasn't particularly good. Needed a lot of extra lessons to kind of get any sort of speed. I wasn't really until I hit puberty and everything sort of started clicking into gear quite quickly.
Yeah.
And at that point, I was quite a young developer. So I was the height I am now at about 11 and a half, 12. So I was like, brilliant, I'm going to be like 6 foot something. Nope, stopped at 5'9". So, yeah, a bit of a shame. So that's kind of how I got it. Excuse me, that's how I got into it. And then, through kind of school, Wigan, I was in the Scheme of Excellence after being in the club. Did junior national championships. Until I kind of damaged my shoulder, which sort of put any kind of, I guess, it made it an easy decision. Do you know what I mean? If you're going to carry on in sports, or if you're going to go down the other path and focus on education or whatever, it became very easy for me because I damaged my shoulder diving into a swimming pool on holiday, trying to show off, impress a girl. Like, this was the week after junior nationals, and I was 14 or 15, and it was repetitive strain, it turned out. My shoulder just decided at that point, pectoralis major had enough. Came out doing fly again. Should never have tried fly, and just tore across there, and then was kind of misdiagnosed. And my coach at the time was, well, if you're not going to do any swimming, then you might as well get out. It's like, I wasn't that kid who ever shirked. You know what I mean? I would always do it. I would try and win the warm up. That was my start. Do you know what I mean? Like, utterly pointless things like that. That's how competitive I was. That's probably why I ended up with the stress that I did, the repetitive strain injury that I did a little bit. So that kind of ended things a little bit. I still carried on at uni, but that, while disappointing and really annoying and something I actually still have to manage now, it at least did give me a little bit of clarity in life that, it's definitely going to be the education route. Because let's be fair, even if it hadn't happened, the height that I am, I wasn't going to be the best swimmer in the world. It wasn't going to happen.
Yeah, no, I mean, I suppose that's a fair comment, but it's a real shame because I guess you'll never know now, which is, I guess, a shame. But you said you carried on swimming at uni. Where did you go to uni?
Undergrad, I did Lancaster University. So I did a degree was in psychology, actually. So that was cool. Almost considered going down the sports psychology route.
Okay.
Ultimately, left into journalism. But yeah, so I raced for my uni there, Lancaster. I was the captain for a year. Yeah, did okay there. I mean, we were not. It was always interesting at like so books, national champs,
Sure.
and I got a video where it's all obviously quite grainy footage from way back when I was at uni, but it's at Ponds Forge. And I go all the way across the pool, and you see those from Bath, from Loughborough, from loads of other clubs, and they're just cheering. They're going absolutely crazy. And then you get to our team in Lancaster, and we're all just like that because we're just massively hungover from the night out that we did. So we had other priorities. Like even our our logo was someone with a beer like that coming in.
Brilliant. Well, and so what from a kind of a competition point of view, what has swimming meant to you since you? I mean, you said it's quite young when you had your injury. You kind of knew, okay, well, a potential swimming career is over. I'll perhaps go down the educational route, but you've carried on swimming. So was it something you just did for fun, still love racing, or was there still that part of you that was like, you just never know, if I just keep training here, who knows how fast I could get?
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of I was at ease with it after uni, sort of, okay, that's probably it in terms of racing. I didn't know anything about masters swimming, to be honest, at that point. I'd go to the gym, which had a pool in it a couple of times a week, maybe, but had no intentional thought of going back to racing. And then I was randomly at this house party in London and saw this guy with a low cut top who had a tattoo, which was like the Team GB logo. It's like, okay, he doesn't look like an athlete, or he's not someone I know, because I know, I knew a lot of the Olympic team. So I went over and spoke to him. It's like, oh no, I'm not on the Olympic team, but I'm on the GB Masters team. It's like, Master, and I'm a swimmer, and he's a backstroker. It's like, hang on, okay, right. What the hell's this all about? And he explained it to me about like 2 a.m. in the morning over several pints and shots and stuff, and got it into my head. It's like, okay, I've got to investigate this master swimmers, what it's all about. And then, yeah, basically investigated it, found out that there were all these races around the UK. I broke up with my partner at the time and needed something basically to distract myself and to focus on, and the pool became that. Do you know what I mean? And I started hitting it properly, managing it, because I tried, usually if I do a couple of sessions a week, the third one, that's when the shoulder would go, and then I'd have to have a couple of weeks out and stuff. But this time I was just so methodical and careful with it. I did so much prehabilitation and rehab afterwards, following a lot of what I'd seen a lot of athletes do over the years and kind of copying them from inside. And that's kind of, how I got into it. And first races were in 2015. I did one to do the warm-up, to warm up the qualifying times for the World Masters in Kazan, because I knew I was going there for the BBC to cover the Elite Championships, and the Masters were going to be the week after. So I was like, well, why not stay out there? If I'm going to do it, might as well do it properly. That was my first one. It was an absolutely amazing experience. Got 2 top 10s, which wasn't too bad. Which was a decent start. And that was the start of the journey, really. And from there, I just wanted to do more and get better.
Sounds great. So how many years difference were there between kind of when you finished at uni to when you kind of got into the master's space?
Over 10. Yeah, 10, 11,
wow.
12 years.
And did you not really swim at all in that 10 years, just every so often? Or
as I said, if I did a couple of sessions a week, I would then probably have to be out of the pool for 2 weeks because of my shoulder. So I'd barely done any during that time. I got a little bit tubby.
How often are you getting in the pool now, or think about the last, say, 5 years? What's your kind of average been a week?
It would be 4 times a week, and like a little bit of gym work around that. I mean, look, ideally, I'd like to be in the pool every day bar one. That's what I'd love to do, but physically I can't. Do you know what I mean? Like you like, all right, I could get in, but I know it's not going to be a good session. I'm going to have to be really, really careful. So I know I'm going to benefit better from either having a rest day and then going hard the next 2, or doing a gym day or something like that, just to vary it up, just to take the pressure off the shoulders a little bit and manage that. Because, and that might be something you find, a lot of people who are listening, it's so hard sometimes when you've still got that feeling that you did when you were a kid, midway through a set and you're absolutely burning and the adrenaline's pumping, you feel great and you just want to go for it. And then there's that little thing, like you'll just feel something. You're like, no, I can't smash it through this injury.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I've got to be careful. I've just got to rein it down. And that's probably the hardest thing I found as a master swimmer is tempering that passion, that desire to go for it and to try and manage it so that you know that when it does come to that race or that event or that really important set before a competition in the build up, that you can hit it and just rein yourself in a little bit.
Yeah, it's incredibly hard, isn't it? And I think it took me a while actually to. I would often ignore the signs. I've been quite fortunate. I've not had any chronic injuries, but I've had tweaks. But again, they could be lower back things that put you out for 2 weeks where you don't train at all. And I would ignore them all the time. And that could be in the gym or it could be in the pool. And it's taken me a while, I think, to get in tune with my body and to be able to tell myself, if you carry on at this intensity, you're going to be doing nothing for 2 weeks. And I think when you can finally kind of get on the same page there, it's good. But interesting, you said 4 times a week as an average, but then you also said that a while ago, any more than twice and you'd be struggling. Mm-hmm. So are you doing a lot of prehab at the moment, or do you think just that rest over the years has helped?
No, it's definitely. I mean, I thought rest was key, but it is actually it's the active recovery is so much more important, and getting your body properly ready to be in the pool. I'm better at not trying to win the warm up, as it were, which I always used to kid, because I know you can't do that to be able to make it through the session in one piece. But it's just like literally spending. It's funny when I go back to train with Wigan, because there aren't that many masters swimmers. And you'll get in at the same time as like the oldest juniors, so like 15, 16-year-olds and stuff. And I'm there like 20 minutes before they are, maybe even half an hour, to start warming up, to start doing like the pull cords and everything, to try and just get your body ready to get in, whereas they'll just rock up and dive in. And I'm very envious of them. But it's the prehab and stuff wasn't around when I started, when I was swimming. It was just coming in after I'd done my injury. The warm-up was you get in and you do 1,500, or we'll set you, sometimes they'll throw a load of fly sets at you to get you properly warm, rather than building it up gradually. So I mean, that's the biggest thing. The reason that I can do much more now is because of the work that you do out of the pool. And don't get me wrong, I don't like it. I'm a water baby. I like being in the water. I don't like doing any of the gym work. But if I don't do that, then I can't swim. Do you know what I mean? The way that I want to. So it's kind of that trade-off.
No, for sure. I'm quite interested, actually, of all the elite swimmers that you've spoken to over the years. Have you ever taken any tips off them, or just asked them little questions about what they do in training, or have you ever talked about your turn, for example, and been like, well, what do you think I should do here?
To be honest, I'm always too embarrassed to compare myself or ask any of them, because I feel very much like a fraud. It's more like, kind of, for example, if they're working, so if we did like a training camp and they're there with some sort of performance analysis side, I might have like a quick word with them, or when we get their footage in quite a lot of the time, because they'll film, as I said, the underwaters. I'll be like, right, I want this footage so we can edit, but I also want to watch it because I want to see what they're doing. Okay, that many kicks, like that. So you pick up little bits and pieces. And then just seeing them, as I said, warm up before a session, or the way they fire themselves up before a race, it's kind of picking that. I don't really like talking about my swimming to an actual swimmer, because, as I said, I feel very much like a fraud.
No, that's fair enough. I think the way you just framed it like that at the end kind of definitely makes sense. Do you feel like you've got any kind of unfinished business in the pool, or should I say, is there anything that you still really want to achieve?
There are things that I still want to do, but I'm not sure if I want to say them, because then if I don't achieve them, I might be disappointed. I don't know. Look, there are things that I set out to begin with. I just wanted to race and enjoy it. I had no targets in terms of medals, or where I wanted to race or something like that. It was sort of that came over time, because, as you probably know, when you do win and you set a good time and you get a medal, it feels quite good, and you want to do it again. Again, similar to what I was saying with the broadcasting, and how I guess elite swimmers feel, you always want to move on to the next thing. So look, there's regardless of result, actually, I'd really like to lower my 100-meter backstroke PB. That it's the event that I love. Always love the 100. I know I'm better at the 200, but the 200 back hurts and I don't like it at all. It's just the whole way. You're like, God, I hate this event. until the end, and then you're like, oh, I placed well, great, okay, maybe I'll do another one. But the 100 is the one that I loved, and that's the reason that I always wanted to race. But I haven't got one of those right in my head since I think it was like 2017 nationals. That was the last time I did 100 time. I was like, well, it was the PB that I set. It was like, that's the last time I absolutely nailed it. And I've gone quicker in every event subsequently since. Even when you get older, obviously 2017, 6 years ago, so you think, right, well, maybe I'm slowing down. I've still set PBs at 50 and at 200 in that period. So it's like, right, there's no reason why I can't go quicker in the 100 in theory, but for some reason it always goes wrong. And I don't know if that's mentally. Like, I had a few races where my foot slipped on the block, so and getting that out of your head once it's there that it could happen is really hard, because it's one of my starts were good, right? When I 9 times out of 10, 99 times out of 100, they're one of my best things. My reaction times are really good. My underwater's good. But now having it in my head that something could go wrong really plays on your mind, and you had to lose that fraction of a second. Or if you slip, and that's race, or at least a PB that you're chasing, basically gone. So that, in terms of, yes, there are things that I'd like to win, and events that I would like to go to and do well in. The biggest thing it would to lower my 100-meter backstroke PB, short course. I prefer short course to long course. Sure. I know a lot of people, long course is the proper swimming, but I always like turning. I always like working on your skills. So if I could lower my 100-meter backstroke short course time one more time in my life, I would be very happy indeed.
Yeah, no, and I'm absolutely sure you can. And so that leads me to the final question then. Have you got any races kind of lined up? What's your next one that you're going to be going to?
Next one, Scottish Nationals, which I'm going to look at my calendar, is in 21st of April. Yes, okay. So I think that's my next race. I'm not actually swimming the 100-meter backstroke in that. Okay. 200 unfortunately. So it definitely won't be that one that I set it in. And then after that, there's sort of like, there's a Pan Asian Games in South Korea in May. There's a European Masters Games in Finland in July. There are potentially 2 that I'm looking at competing in. Okay. They would both be long course events, but as two targets, they'd be pretty good, cool ones this year. And then obviously, short course English Nationals later in the year. Yeah. So yeah, plenty to look forward to.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for your time today. I really enjoyed that, and thank you so much for coming on. And good luck on your 100 backstroke.
Thank you very much. It's been an honor, Joe. Cheers.
Cheers.